Thank you so much for having me today, Johanna. It's a real pleasure to be here and to be able to speak to you and tell you a little bit more about our journey at ShareTheMeal. Yes, I have indeed been there nearly since the beginning, if not quite from the origins, but I've been with the World Food Programme and with the ShareTheMeal team for nearly 4 years now. So yeah, I'm looking forward to telling you a little bit more about what we've learned along the way. Just to go back to the roots of ShareTheMeal, you will probably all know this very well, but this is kind of the core of what we do. So ShareTheMeal is the idea of two entrepreneurs or two people who were working for the World Food Programme, Bernhard Kovac and Sebastian Stricker, who worked in different functions, and during their work, they realized that there were really two groups of people that they would like to bring together. So on the one side, there are 821 million hungry people throughout the world, and yet at the same time, there is such a big population of smartphone users in the world. In fact, if you look at the data, roughly 20 times as many smartphone users as hungry children. And so the idea behind ShareTheMeal was to harness the power of this audience, of these smartphone users around the world, and to give them an easy way to do good. All of us are used to doing so many fun things, or let's say not necessarily that meaningful things on their phones. And the idea was really to use a phone to do something good too, and to be reminded of the power that is in your own smartphone. And at the same time, these two staff members realized that the cost of feeding one child is actually so low. So it costs on average 40 euro cents or $50 to feed one child for a day. And this is an amount that here in Berlin, where we are based, or even in New York City, or wherever you are, it's something that you can barely buy an apple or a sandwich or anything with. And yet that is enough to actually feed one child for a day. So we wanted to create this micro-funding, micro-donation platform that allows really people all around the world to do good. ShareTheMeal was launched in 2015. We started off with a pilot launch in Germany because it was really far from clear whether this idea would take off, whether this would be interesting to anyone. So the idea was to start in a relatively contained market and to see if it was an idea that would catch on. Fortunately for us, it did catch on, and in November 2015, we then launched worldwide. So the app is now available in every market around the world and can be downloaded from the Apple App Store or from the Google Play Store. And we do see actually that people in really every country use the app, and it's caught on. ShareTheMeal is, as Johanna said in the beginning, it's an initiative of the World Food Programme, so fully a part of WFP. And we sit in the Innovation and Change Management Division. We're also closely affiliated to the Innovation Accelerator, so we fit into that network there. All funds that we raise go to WFP operations, so we're really an individual fundraising arm of WFP. Now, what has happened since 2015? I was nearly going to write nearly 40 million meals here, but we're not quite there yet. So we're actually at 39.7 million meals shared. So that's nearly $20 million that we have raised since the launch in 2015. This week, we also look to be hitting the 1.5 million downloads. So that's people who have actively installed the app from the Apple App Store, from the Play Store, and we see roughly 100,000 active users on the app. Now, the difference between 1.5 million downloads and 100,000 active users might seem a little bit low to you, but that's actually a relatively good share for an application. So this is sort of the overall numbers. Then I got this slide to sort of tell you a little bit more about the audience and who uses ShareTheMeal. At the inception of ShareTheMeal, the idea was to speak to millennials who use their phones probably most actively, are digital natives, and the phones are kind of ingrained in their daily habits. And the idea was not to really take away from other fundraising channels, but to find a new audience that historically or traditionally speaking is not that or was not that engaged with fundraising or with charitable giving. And what we've seen over the past 4 years nearly is that, in fact, Share the Meal does speak to these millennials, and that millennials in particular value the transparency and being able to track their impact and to see where funds are going. So we see that 40% of our donors are in the age range 25 to 34. And then we have 18% in the 18 to 24 age range. And we also see a fair number of users above that. But for us, it was really interesting to see that actually the bulk of our users are in this millennial generation. And they certainly exhibit other behavior than probably more traditional charitable giving audiences. We've also seen, interestingly, that our donors are more male than female. This is something that we're still trying to understand. We think it might have had to do with sort of the types of media that reported about us, or also that maybe there's a greater affinity to using tech. We don't quite know that yet. We're trying to understand that still, but that's also an interesting observation. And then on the right of this slide, we have the breakdown of our revenue, of our donations by country. And you see here that Germany is still a very meaningful contributor to our fundraising income. This is simply because we launched in Germany in the beginning, and we still have a very loyal supporter base here. Over the past few years, we've also grown other markets. So the US is a market that we're very keen to better understand, that has a strong history in charitable giving, and of course also smartphone adoption, application usage. So that's something that we're very keen on growing further. And if you're wondering about UAE and Singapore, this is basically a result of our Ramadan campaigns. So for the past 3 years, we've run dedicated marketing campaigns and engagement campaigns throughout the holy month. And we actually see that users have really taken to Share the Meal and have used this as their platform for charitable giving throughout the month. So this is also an interesting observation for us, that a platform like this resonates so well in these markets. Then moving on to what happens with the funds that we raise. So in the Share the Meal app, I'll definitely let you know where you can download it afterwards, but in the Share the Meal app, users have to select where they want to help. This is something that's really important to us, because we think it makes a big difference for users to know where their funds are going. So we run dedicated campaigns, is what we call them. We agree with a country or with a program manager on a certain target, a financial target, where we define how many people we can help with a certain amount of contributions. So for example, we might say that we can help 2,500 children in Afghanistan by providing them with nutrition assistance. And we then create a campaign in the app. So we tell our users where they can donate to. The user then selects which country he or she wants to help in, and the funds then go to that country. And you can see that we have run campaigns for 20 countries around the world. We've supported both some more in stable environments, fundraising for school meals programs, for example. Currently, we're fundraising for school meals in the Republic of Congo. We've also helped school children in Malawi or in Cameroon. And we have also fundraised for some of WFP's most critical operations. So for example, Yemen or Syria or Bangladesh. So we always try to have a bit of a mix of more emergency settings and more stable settings, because for us it's really important in the app to show the breadth of what WFP does and which kind of different platforms or which kind of different programs WFP actually runs. Now, this is what the app looks like. This is sort of the key page, the donation picker, where every user will then select how many meals they want to share. As I said before, we start at 40 cents, which feeds a child for a day, 280 then feeds a child for 1 week, and so on. We've actually seen over the course of the 4 years that most of our donations are higher than the 40 cents. So whilst it's really important from a communication perspective to tell users that they can start at 40 cents, the average donation is closer to 2 to 3 euros, depending on which market we're speaking about. So for us, this was also a very interesting observation that people are really keen also to use their smartphones to give bigger amounts. Some of the other key features that we have in the app is that we have Apple and Google Pay enabled. We were one of the first charities and the first mobile fundraising application that was allowed to use these services, which for us is very important because it's something that people or smartphone users are used to from other services, and it significantly lowers the threshold of actually donating. Usually if you have to enter your credit card or your PayPal address, you might not have it at hand, so it's really important to make the whole process as streamlined and as convenient as possible. In addition to our one-off donations, we also have a subscription feature that I'll get to in a little bit. We've also tried to gamify the app while still, of course, being respectful about what we're doing. We aren't just any other game, but we do think that, especially in speaking to a millennial audience, it's actually very important to also make this engaging and to provide an incentive for users to come back. So for example, if you are a monthly donor, you will obtain a karma achievement. Or if you are connected with your Facebook account and you tell your friends about Share the Meal, then you can get a social butterfly achievement. And this is something that we think resonates well with a particular audience. In addition to giving just by yourself individually, we also have the option of giving as a team. So for example, you might join forces with friends, family, with colleagues. Your employer or corporates might also create a team and then give together. You can work towards a challenge, or you can just give jointly. And we think that this social aspect of working towards a certain aim together can really also encourage people to come on board and to tell people, to tell their friends about Share the Meal and to spread the word. Another feature that we have is a camera giving feature. The idea here was to sort of hack the foodie pic movement. So as I said in the beginning, we use our phones for all sorts of things, many of us probably also for taking pictures of our own meals. And so the idea here was to enable people to take a picture of their meal, to add a filter saying this picture feeds a hungry child, and then to make a donation and to post this picture on Instagram or whichever platform you like. And so the idea really is to use this not only to enable a donation, but also to spread the word. And last but not least, we have a gifting feature. So for example, during Christmas or also during Ramadan, Mother's Day, whichever occasion, you can share meals on behalf of other people, of your loved ones. And this is actually also really taken on because people want to do something different, want to give differently. And this is a good opportunity to do so. Now, I wanted to tell you a little bit about our subscription feature. Our subscriptions feature is called The Table. And The Table is not just any monthly giving program, but something a little bit different. So the idea here was to create a bigger degree of transparency for our monthly donors. So we use data that the World Food Programme collects anyway in our Scope beneficiary data management platform that tracks various types of interventions, but in particular also cash-based transfers. So for example, in countries like Sudan, South Sudan, Nigeria, Syria, or Bangladesh, the World Food Programme collects information on what beneficiaries have purchased with their monthly allowance. We then use this information to tell our monthly donors about the types of food that a family in need has bought with their help. Of course, we retain the anonymity of the beneficiary, but we can still match each monthly donor with a certain beneficiary and say that, for example, Sarah in Syria, name is not anonymized, has bought rice or flour, chestnuts, and oil with their help. And we think that by providing this additional information, people will be more inclined to remain monthly donors. They will have a greater loyalty to their subscription, and that this transparency of the impact that they specifically are achieving is actually very valuable to them. And we launched this feature 1 year ago. We've seen our subscriptions since then really skyrocket. So we're now at roughly 9,000 monthly donors. And for us, this has really shown that actually giving more information is really the key to attracting donors. At the same time, for us, this is really only a first step towards peer-to-peer giving. We think that we can get even more direct, possibly even to the point where your donation fills the e-card that the beneficiary might use in his transaction. We're not there yet, but that's something where we see this moving in the future. Now, how have we gotten to where we're at right now? From 2015 until mid to late 2018, we didn't really have any meaningful marketing budget. The only budget that we had was to cover staff costs, to cover our fixed costs, but no real marketing or communications budget. Everything we did in that time was organic marketing. So we relied to a large degree on App Store features. We were very fortunate to have quite a few of those. We relied on those, we relied on positive media, and we relied on campaigns that we created on the team. So usually we would find an occasion, create an idea that we could craft content around. We would often reach out to influencers or to agencies or similar that would provide us with low bono or pro bono support. And this allowed us actually really to acquire new users throughout the world. So this was for us, worked definitely quite well. You can see here on the left is the 40-cent coin idea. This is a campaign we ran in Italy, where we created plastic 40-cent coins, and we showed them to people on the street and asked them what they thought they could do with it. And of course, no one actually thought that they could feed a child with that amount. But it was a really positive video for us and something that resonated very well in the media too. In the middle, you can see an advertising we did on the subway in New York, where we also tried to tell people that really their donation of 50 cents could feed a child or a refugee for World Refugee Day last year. And then we've also been really fortunate to be featured on Times Square, which of course also gives us quite a bit of publicity there. Since the end of 2018, we have also been able to use Facebook, Google, and Apple for user acquisition. Now, these digital marketing channels are platforms that every other app that you might use in your daily life, from Uber to Deliveroo to whatever, food delivery, whatever you might use, they would use such channels for their user acquisition or for their re-engagement of existing users. And so for us, this was really something that we wanted to try and to understand whether it would be a good possibility to scale the app, to acquire new users, and to keep re-engaging those that we had already acquired. And we've been testing this quite a bit. We've been testing the different channels. We've been testing different types of messaging. We've been testing showing these ads to different audiences, all of which you can do very well with these platforms. So you can see the different types of content we've used here. And we've actually seen that it's a very good way of growing our user base for the future. And so this is, for us, this has really been a change, because we think that this will allow us to scale the app and to grow it further and to grow the donation revenue for WFP. But it is definitely something that requires more testing and, of course, also a marketing budget to start with. So that's sort of where we see this heading in the future. Now, last but not least, who is behind ShareTheMeal and how has this worked? We have the big advantage, I would say, that everything that we do is kind of in a relatively small team, and we can cover both the product and tech side, as well as the operations and the marketing within this unit. We've seen that this has been really good to collaborate between the different aspects. So for example, if marketing wants to run a marketing campaign around a certain feature, then it makes a lot of sense to also speak to the developers working on it. And this collaboration has been extremely successful for us over the past few years, I would say. We have roughly 23 people, not all of them are on here yet, but roughly 23 people on our team from various backgrounds, some from nonprofits, some from other startups. In Berlin, there's a very vibrant startup scene, so we acquire people from those companies too. We also have people who come from more sort of traditional management consulting, finance backgrounds. But I think what brings everyone together is that they want to work on something for the greater good, that they want to make a difference, and that ShareTheMeal and WFP are a great way of doing that. And we, I would say, are on the right track, but there's also still a lot that we can do on the team, and a lot of further aspects that we can add to the app and to further improve the app to grow more or to gain more donations for WFP operations around the world.